Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Jason Howell and I talk with 10's Will Oremus about Facebook's deepfakes ban, though it's lax on shallow fakes. Then we speak with Robertson over at The Verge about Sonos taking on Google for allegedly stealing its smart speaker tech. And Pruitt joins us live to talk about some of the awesome stuff he saw at CES. Plus, sex tech companies have a home at CES, and we go all in on Bluetooth LE's audio improvements. Stay tuned. Tech News Weekly is brought to you from LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 115, recorded Thursday, January 9th, 2020. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by LastPass. LastPass is a personal password manager and identity solution for businesses that helps secure everywhere you work and live. One password gets you in, and LastPass will take care of the rest. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly. This is the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent.
I'm Jason Howell. This week, there's been a lot of breaking news because of CES.
Yes, the news breaks. It sort of breaks in the case that a lot of times you're looking at prototypes. So is it like, true. Is this really going to come to market?
I'm just not so sure. That's very, very true. But this is not necessarily a CES story to top off the show here at the very beginning. Facebook, like pretty much any social network today, has had its fair share of run-ins with the growing threat, let's say, of deep fakes on its platform. As we lead up to the 2020 election, Facebook is attempting to tighten its controls, and deep fakes are in the crosshairs there, as well as a number of things. So many announcements coming from Facebook, it's hard to keep it all straight. But there's just enough gray area here to keep things complicated. And joining us to discuss this is Will Oremus from 10, who wrote about this at 10. Welcome back to the show, Will.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely.
It's great to get you on. So, first of all, what kinds of deep fakes, and even you mentioned shallow fakes in your article, has Facebook had to deal with thus far? I know the Nancy Pelosi kind of slurring words, slow down thing isn't technically a deep fake, but I think a lot of people might kind of put that into the same category. What are they dealing with before we get to the changes they've made?
Yeah, the funny thing is they're actually not dealing with many deepfakes, at least by Facebook's narrow definition of what counts as a deepfake. The Pelosi one is probably the most famous example of a faked video or a doctored video that has gone viral on Facebook and actually might have had some kind of impact on people. This was one, if you can recall, where it was somebody slowed down a speech by Nancy Pelosi to make it look like she might have been drunk or intoxicated, or maybe had dementia or something. It traveled pretty far and wide. People saying, "Wow, what's wrong with Nancy Pelosi?" Before it was exposed that it was, in fact, edited. That's not a deepfake, though. It's what people call a shallow fake. It's just conventional video editing tools. Anybody could do it in their home. A deepfake is when you use machine learning or AI usually to superimpose one person's head on another person's body. So it makes it look like the person is saying or doing something that they didn't really say or do. That's what Facebook's new policy is targeting. The truth is we haven't seen much of that. If there is a canonical example, it's probably created actually by BuzzFeed in 2018 for purposes of illustrating what deepfakes are. They made a video where it looked like Barack Obama was giving an address. He was all in a suit in front of the American flag, and he said things like Donald Trump is a complete and utter. Then the camera pulled back and showed that it was actually Jordan Peele who was doing Obama's voice, and they were using deepfake technology to make it look like Obama was saying things he wasn't. That sparked a lot of fear and panic. You know, is this the future of social media? And it still could be, but in the year and a half since then, it just hasn't been. I think they're hard to do. Nobody maybe has wanted to be the first to get in trouble for it. They're hard to do convincingly, so maybe there have been some that just haven't gone very viral. But really, it's not a problem today on the platform of Facebook.
Yeah, and I think as I was kind of hearing you walk through these things, stepping back to the Pelosi example that you use, on one hand, someone could say, oh, well, that's a shallow fake, let's say. On the other hand, someone could say, well, no, I made that as more like a parody or a satire thing or whatever. And therein lies this weird kind of murky world of, okay, well, what was the intention? What was the purpose? And do these rules actually do anything to tackle one versus the other? Who makes that determination? That's why the rules such as these are so difficult to enforce. So what exactly has Facebook said? Like, what is their criteria?
Right. So they laid out a very specific definition of what counts as a deepfake under their policy, which bans deepfakes. So in order to qualify as a deepfake, you have to be using machine learning or AI software, and it has to be making a person look like they said something that they did not, in fact, say. In addition to that, if it is parody or satire, if it's deemed parody or satire, then it will not be banned. That will still be allowed. So presumably the BuzzFeed example would not be taken down because it was, it was a parody, right? Let's see, were there any other key elements there? Oh, it's also, the fact that they're talking about only what people said means if you could do a deep fake that makes it look like somebody's doing something that they're not actually doing, that wouldn't count under the ban. So no shallow fakes, no videos that aren't about that aren't about speech and people. So there's a lot that it doesn't cover, in fact.
Okay. So I know that early on when we first started hearing about these rules, there was some sort of exclusion, which I thought was kind of interesting of, political figures are, wouldn't qualify into this. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's something to reconsider because I could see that happening.
Kind of a big thing, yeah.
Call me crazy. But that was all a bit of confusion. What happened there exactly?
Right. So it at first seemed that the policy was going to have an exemption for politicians, which is true of Facebook's policy on fact-checking ads. If you're not a politician and you run an ad that comes out false as in the fact-checking process, that Facebook will take that down. They won't let you run that. But if you're a politician, they will. They say it's because ads by politicians are newsworthy. I think most people suspect it's really because Facebook doesn't want to be in the position of taking down a politician's ad when that politician might have power over Facebook. But there is some legitimate newsworthiness argument there. But then Facebook spokesman said, actually, we got it wrong. The deepfakes policy does not have an exemption for politicians. Politicians won't be able to post a deepfake under our new policy, just like everybody else won't be able to post a deepfake under our new policy. But the funny thing is, the fact that Facebook's own policy spokesperson is getting this wrong just illustrates how Byzantine Facebook's rules are becoming. It has different ways of dealing with misinformation, ads from politicians, deepfakes, shallow fakes, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know why Facebook would draw the line in the sand for, let's say, deepfakes, and which they made a point of saying, AI created, that sort of thing, versus like, I guess, human created. Like, you can do the same effect, the human using a computer versus an AI doing this, dynamically for you. But I don't know, maybe they just assume that the AI version is going to be more convincing. But why they're drawing the line in the sand with what they call deepfakes and these shallow fakes that can also be destructive and damaging are being allowed through. Is this why do you believe that is? Why aren't they committing on a much wider scale to this? Is it just so difficult to do at scale? I mean, that's Facebook's eternal problem.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's the Facebook explanation, then there's sort of the cynical explanation. I think the cynical explanation would look at the fact that Facebook released this policy a day before it was scheduled to testify on Capitol Hill in a House subcommittee hearing on manipulation of social media. So they wanted to have something to point to when they're up there in front of Congress, to say, look, we are doing something. We're being proactive. We're ahead of the curve. I think there's probably no doubt that played a role in motivating this policy on Facebook's part. But as for the question of why it's so narrow, why it isn't a broader policy, the cynical explanation is that because they don't actually want to have to do anything. So they're tackling a non-existent problem, right? They're tackling a problem of deepfakes that don't that don't really happen. The Facebook explanation, which I think there's probably something to it, is look, we already have policies for other types of misinformation. If you were to post that Pelosi video, and in fact, when people did post that Pelosi video, once fact checkers looked at it and examined it and debunked it and said this isn't, this is a doctored video. That came under Facebook's policies on misinformation. And under those policies, Facebook doesn't take down the post. They don't ban it. But what they do is they will add a little pop-up that said this has been flagged as false by our fact checkers. They'll link to the fact checkers. They'll link to related articles. If you try to share a post that's been flagged by Facebook's fact checkers, it'll tell you, and it'll give you a little warning before you share it. So that's a different mechanism. And that one sort of supersedes the deepfakes policy. Well, I should say the deepfake policy supersedes it when it meets that incredibly narrow definition that Facebook set up for deepfakes. But for most of the stuff that we're actually worried about, it's still covered under that same misinformation policy that Facebook already has. And then it's also worth noting that most of the actual deepfakes out there today are pornographic. They're deepfakes that are about putting. Usually women are the target. They put one woman's face on the body of a porn star or something like that. There's a real problem that really, does need to be addressed. But Facebook already has that one covered in a sense because it has rules against nudity and pornography that's already banned. So the vast majority of deepfakes that do exist are already covered under Facebook's policies today.
Yeah, right on. Well, excellent stuff. And we've kind of run out of time, but I also want to mention that your colleague Dave Gershgorn wrote about deepfakes as well today. Kind of the opposite side, though, where other networks like TikTok are actually monetizing deepfakes. So while you've got Facebook saying, heck no, we don't, we want to limit this on our platform, there are other platforms that are saying, well, why don't we turn it into a fun, product for our users? And that's just going to muddy the waters even further in this regard. But Will, really appreciate you taking time to join us today. Will Oremus, 10.medium.com. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Coming up next, Sonos has Google in its crosshairs. Dun, dun, dun. That's up next. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by LastPass. 17.8 million people, over 61,000 businesses trust LastPass. We do here at Twit, and maybe you should too. LastPass is an award-winning security solution that helps individuals and businesses navigate their online lives easily and securely. And you can choose from a number of plans. They've got free, premium, or families for personal plans. And then business plans, they've got teams, enterprise, MFA, or identity. So a lot of different combinations, a lot of different options and features. Go to lastpass.com/twit. That's where you can get all of the detailed information on each plan to find out what's going to work best for you. And there's just a number of things that make LastPass so awesome. A number of reasons why I personally love LastPass. Number one, it generates strong passwords for you. So you don't have to think about those passwords, come up with them, write them down, do whatever you do to remember all of these passwords. Coming up with strong passwords is not easy when you at scale. LastPass does it beautifully. You can share passwords or notes within LastPass to employees or family members. LastPass for Business offers very flexible password management, single sign-on, and multi-factor authentication options. And it can go on any device anywhere. You've got a number of devices, laptops, mobile phones, desktop computers, browsers, Chrome OS, whatever you have, LastPass can be there. Holds personal and corporate credit cards, pictures of passports, any really important documents that you want to store securely. You can do that with LastPass. Now offers passwordless login options for employees, which even further increases security and productivity. LastPass security is ahead of its time. They engage trusted world-class third-party security firms to conduct routine audits and testing of their service and their infrastructure. They've got a detailed review of their controls and processes that is the gold standard for confirming the security and reliability. And sensitive data is encrypted at the device level with AES 256 before syncing with TLS to protect from man-in-the-middle attacks. We use it here, LastPass Enterprise, in fact, here at Twit. We love it. I've been using LastPass for years now, and it's improved my password health. It just makes it easy. I now have my LastPass Twit account synced up with my LastPass personal account, so it's like this mega LastPass
Mega
access.
transformer.
Yes, I'm protected and managed on all fronts, and it's great. You need LastPass for you and your business with their amazing features that will improve security across your company and make your life easier for your users. Visit LastPass.com/twit to find out how they can help you. That's LastPass.com/twit. And we thank LastPass for their support of Tech News Weekly.
Thank you very much, LastPass. So you have a Sonos speaker, or you have a Google Home speaker.
I have one of those.
Okay, so you've got that.
A few of those.
Now, do you use the ability to listen to music in multiple rooms?
Heck yes,
option?
I do. It's a great feature. I love it.
You know, that reminds me of something. Reminds
What?
me of what Sonos does with multi-room audio.
Yeah, well, I remember when the Google Home's got that feature, I was like, oh, I thought you needed a Sonos to do that.
And Sonos,
Ding.
Sonos has been thinking a little bit about that. In fact, Sonos is accusing Google and Amazon of stealing its smart speaker technology. They're a little peeved, and I am curious to learn more. Joining us is Adi Robertson of The Verge to tell us all about Sonos and its case. Hello. Welcome.
Hi.
Hiya. So I think we should start off with the big thing here. The question that I had kind of going into this is, what is the actual lawsuit alleging? What is it that Sonos says that Google is stealing from Sonos?
Basically, Sonos has a list of patents. It's 5, although Sonos is really alleging that Google's sort of stealing everything. But it's covering 5 patents that deal with things like syncing, if you have a group of speakers, syncing their volume collectively, other things that relate to connecting these speakers over a local area network instead of like wiring them together, the sort of key things that Sonos is known for, basically. And Sonos spoke to the New York Times and alleged that actually it's like 100 patents. They've been warning Google about this for years. They also made claims about Amazon, but they're keeping the case itself pretty focused at this moment.
Just focused on Google. Now, I saw some conversation there that the reason they're kind of keeping it focused on Google is they don't necessarily have the funds to go after 2 big tech companies at once. And I'm curious if that's something that you had read as well.
That is in the New York Times piece.
Okay.
It doesn't quite directly say funds, but it says, they didn't think that they could tangle with 2 tech giants at once.
That makes sense. I certainly don't think I could either. Now, this, I think, is the fascinating part of it. Sonos is specifically sort of citing the fact that it had a partnership in 2013 to provide Google Play music support on the Sonos devices. And apparently, allegedly, it was at that point that Google started to use or had access to Sonos's technology. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Right. So the reporting says that, yes, Sonos, it started working with Google in 2013, and it wanted to add support for Google's music service, and it sort of handed over its blueprints to how to design the speakers with these wireless capabilities. And then a couple of years later, Google releases its own Chrome audio plugin, which has the same kind of multi-room syncing. And then, of course, over the years after that, it starts rolling out its home speakers and control, like app support for them on its Pixel devices and things like that. And those are all covered in the lawsuit.
Okay. And in this report, you also talk about so the report describes an attempt to make a smart speaker that could simultaneously support multiple voice assistant platforms. That I remember. I remember Sonos sort of saying, hey, we're going to, no matter which assistant you want to use, our device, our speaker is going to support that. So you could say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Boo Boo, or whoever you decide to use, and that voice assistant would work with it. But then apparently Google and Amazon both kind of said, you're going to have to pick one or the other because we don't want to confuse our customers and give them access to all of these. So it almost feels like there's there's more to the story in the sense that there's some friction that already exists in this space. And I'm curious, in your reporting and your research of this, if you kind of came across more than just the, hey, you stole our patents, if there's kind of some bad blood going on in these companies.
So there's a sort of ongoing story, apparently, of Sonos warning Google over the years that it was infringing on these patents, allegedly. And then Sonos claiming that Google sort of retaliated against it using access to Google Assistant. Google Assistant is a big sticking point in the New York Times reporting, where basically Sonos warned Google, and then Google sort of clamped down on the terms to using Google Assistant, arguing that they needed to turn over more detail about their products earlier. And then, like you mentioned, they wanted to make a speaker that could support multiple assistants. And they are claiming that both Google and Amazon absolutely hated this idea, and that Google apparently hated it more. And that Google has had a long-running ban on its speakers, has had a long-running ban on Assistant appearing next to any other sort of big company's voice platform. Okay. Amazon, just for the record, denied that it told them to stop putting simultaneous support on the speaker.
Interesting. Now, what has Google said in response to this? I mean, there's a lot that we've heard from Sonos, which makes sense. I mean, they're actively the ones sort of accusing Google, but has Google said anything in return?
Google has done what would pretty much expected that it was going to do, which is just said that we're prepared to defend these in court, but this is not infringement. Its exact statement is that, is that it's just upset that there were, quote, lawsuits instead of continuing negotiations in good faith.
Interesting.
And then just this morning, I believe it was this morning, Vice President of Amazon, Dave Limp, is also kind of responding to this. Meanwhile, Amazon, like you said, totally out of the crosshairs right now. But pretty certain that if Sonos is successful in going after Google, then they turn their attention to Amazon, and that would strengthen the case against Amazon if they were to win against Google, I guess. But we won't know that for a while. I guess I don't know the strength of the case at this point. I'm kind of surprised that Sonos wouldn't make a step, if this has been a beef that's been happening for the last three years, make a step earlier than this. Does that spell anything about the Sonos's ability to compete in this space? Some people are like, compete instead of litigate, which is the common refrain, I suppose.
There are a lot of things that could be going on. Part of the issue is that Sonos has actually been filing patent lawsuits against other companies, mostly smaller audio companies. It sued and had a pretty successful case against Denon Electronics. And then earlier this year, it sued the company Blue Sound, or the makers of the Blue Sound speakers. And so they've been kind of an ongoing drip of litigation. I think one person has also potentially connected it to the fact that they recently acquired a company that makes its own privacy-focused smart voice system. And so theoretically, they're a little bit less dependent on Assistant at this point.
Yeah, that's Snips, which is an AI voice platform that Sonos has acquired. And the whole sort of pro of this is that it's very privacy-focused and would give them the opportunity to do this, to create a private by design voice assistant that runs on the edge.
And so they would get rid of Assistant and ALEXA?
Yes, because in theory, because essentially running on the edge means running on that device itself. You don't have to have a server connection there to figure that out. Now, interestingly, this, as a reporter of smart home technology and smart technology in general, I'm often talking about the different voice assistants and the different smart speakers that are on the on the market. And Apple makes a device called the HomePod, and it's sort of a joke within the space to talk about how the HomePod doesn't do very well in competition with these other things. But interestingly, it is not mentioned among the other devices or among the other companies that Sonos is going after. So they're going after Google, but they may soon go after Amazon. Why are we not hearing that they may soon also go after Apple for the same thing?
I mean, I don't know how closely Sonos has worked with Apple, if they've worked as closely as they have with Google. I think it is also that Google is sort of the giant with its voice platform and with its whole sort of giant device ecosystem. And Sonos seems like it has, like you've said, sort of specific bad blood with Google.
Gotcha.
And so it is plausible that that's why we're seeing this first.
That makes sense. Yeah. And, I can right now, if I wanted to, pull out my phone and control all of the Echo devices in my house with the volume, control for all of them, play music to all of them. Same thing goes if I had a bunch of different Google Home speakers. But Apple uses a separate technology called AirPlay that sort of exists outside of that space. And so I can see how that also, it wouldn't be as easy to make that argument, given that AirPlay has existed for a long, long time, whereas this multi-room audio feature that both Amazon and Google have added does seem to have come along after they partnered with Sonos for these different things.
Right.
Interestingly, I saw a conversation that Sonos kind of, when it was first, I think it was Alex Lindsay on MacBreak Weekly, kind of talking about how Sonos in the beginning sort of cobbled together this technology, and it was, we're kind of figuring it out as we go along, but we're going to make really good sounding speakers. People will buy those really good sounding speakers. They'll get them in their homes, and that part will be great. And we'll worry about the networking to make sure it all works together afterward. And so now it's at a place where it's sort of perfected that technology. It's seeing other companies use that technology. And it's like, we went there first. And this where this conversation sort of takes place. So and
undercut them on cost.
And yes, because Sonos speakers are very expensive. That's the other thing. You can get a lot of Echo devices without having to spend a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Now, the one thing that I found really fascinating about this report, not only is Sonos going after Google for this, which already, that's a big tech company, but what is it that Sonos is asking for a sales ban on many things, right?
Yeah, it's the Home Max, Home Mini. It is some of these things are not actually running anymore, like the Chromecast audio. It's also Pixel devices, which they are referring to as controllers. Because they are preloaded with software that then you can control these other devices with. And I believe there's also some Nest products.
So that means all of Google's Pixel phones, they want to ban from sale.
Yes, and that's part of, there are two cases. There's a case in California court, and then there's a case with the International Trade Commission. So these are going to sort of proceed separately. And we're not sure whether or not there's going to be a ban on it. But yes, that's what they're arguing for. I believe the Chromecast is also on that list.
Wow.
And the Chromecast Ultra.
That's like almost all of Google's hardware division.
You just circle everything.
Yes.
What would
the
you like
diagram,
to ask
they're
for a
pretty
ban?
much all in there. Yeah.
Everything's banned. Well, this is certainly going to be interesting watching this as it continues. Audie Robertson, I thank you for putting together this report and for joining us today. If people want to follow your work or follow you online, where can they do so?
I am at the Dextriarchy on Twitter, and I am at TheVerge.com. I'm a reporter there.
Excellent.
Thank you, Audie.
Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you
soon.
Thank you. All right. Consumer Electronics Show. We've got a few more things we're going to talk about from CES this episode. Joining us right now is our own Ann Pruitt from the Consumer Electronics Show.
What? Live from CES, maybe?
Ant, are you there?
I am.
Hey, what's happening, man?
Aunt Pruitt, look at that smile.
How you gentlemen doing?
Unbelievable.
Doing awesome. It's great to see you. It's nice to see that you are still well. At least I think you're doing well. You haven't got the con flu yet, right?
No, but I think I did meet patient 0 the first night here.
I saw that, yeah. She said, "You don't want to touch me. I've got everything. I'm sick."
Yeah, and I totally jumped out of the frame.
Yeah, you're like, that's no way to start the Consumer Electronics Show coverage and everything. You've been super busy while you've been there. And so thank you for finding 15 minutes to spend with us to talk about it a little bit. You've been producing a lot of videos with Leo. I think they're going up individually on our YouTube channel at Twit, and then kind of packaged together on the site as well. I don't know. I want to leave this kind of open to you. You are the one that's on the floor there at the Consumer Electronics Show. You've seen probably endless number of things. What are some of the things that really have stood out for you personally that you've really enjoyed?
It's been a couple things from a product standpoint, but there's also some things socially that have stood out to me. First off, on the photographer side, of course, I'm a Canon fan. That's no secret. Canon's 1DX Mark III professional camera was announced, and I got to get some hand time with that. We have a segment of that on our Twit playlist, CES playlist. That's twit.to/CES. It'll take you straight to our YouTube playlist. But I was able to play around with that camera. It's a tank. Get about 15 frames per second shooting stills, 4K up to 60 frames per second for video. Weatherproofing and dust proofing. It is a pros camera. They built it to be better than the last model, of course. The big feature on it that I found interesting was the autofocus, because a lot of times you can have autofocus marks on your sensor, but it's not particularly spread all the way across the camera sensor. So you're going to have some soft edges in a lot of your older cameras. But now Sony has been innovating that by expanding it, and now Canon has done the same thing by expanding that range of the autofocus sensitivity and giving you a lot better low light performance, as well as crispy images, even at 20 megapixels.
Ooh, crispy. Tell us about there was a camera that they said you could use for, I can't think of what it's called. Streaming is the
live
word.
Streaming?
Yeah.
Yep.
What is this streaming camera?
That is the M200. It's using an APS-C sensor known as a crop sensor, so it's going to be a lot smaller. If you're familiar with the M line from Canon, it was their M50. It was really popular with vloggers because it may have been about the size of my Pixel 4 XL. So it's lightweight, but it took really nice photographs and it took really nice video. So now the M200 has the capability to continue to do that, but there's an HDMI out feature on it where you can hook it up to your computer or laptop or whatever. And instead of using those nice high quality webcams that you have, just plug up this M200 for about, I believe it's $4.99, and you're going to get a much better image quality. The gamers and the folks using Twitch, they're going to love it. I was able to see that. They had a nice booth set up to show that off. And the side-by-side version of that versus like a Logitech C922, which is a really nice webcam, it blew it out the water.
Yeah, I'm seeing $4.99 on the Canon store. Interesting. So, yeah, I've always wondered, if you have to go full DSLR to get really crispy stuff, if there is something in between, and this mirrorless camera seems to be in that space.
Crispy. I like that we're calling
yeah,
crispy.
We keep saying crispy. Thank you for introducing that. Krispy Kreme. What are some robots are big, and I saw you hanging out with a robot, finding your new robot pal. What are some of the robots you've seen at CES so far?
The funniest one I saw was called, I think it was Liku, Liku. And it almost looked like a little child.
Yes, that's the one you're holding.
And I'm holding it, and the thing is, it's a robot, but it didn't feel terribly like a robot. They built it with nice curves in the design. So the people that were interested in that kind of thing, I'm clearly not their demographic, but I'm holding it, and it actually felt natural, and the little robotic head would turn and look at you because it has a sensor on the middle of its forehead, and it talked back to us and answered commands. All of it's using AI. It even did a little dance for us. It was, I will say it was cute, because I know that's what Mr. Sargent wants to hear.
Yes, it is what I want to hear. It is cute. Look at it. Oh,
it's like the next generation twerking bear. Is this
my God.
This
is
that's exactly what that was.
Twerking bear 6.0 right there.
Just sort of walking through the hall, and we walked around the little robot section, and that got our attention, and it just had to stop and do a little segment.
All right. Well, we learned some lessons from our dear fallen friend, the
Oh,
Jibo.
Oh, there it is.
I was like, Jibo's disappeared. So, don't get too attached to that robot. Because you just never know when suddenly they're going to turn off the server and
Well, I mean, you have
goes for
that.
a long sleep.
You have that, plus you have the idea of some of these things may not even make it to the U.S. for different trade reasons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we never know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's see here. You put some other stuff in the doc here. Sony Virtual Set. Yeah.
Ooh, my goodness.
What's this all about?
By far my favorite piece of tech shown off here. This is from a company called Neuralize that Sony acquired last year. And they got pretty popular from being on that show Shark Tank. And what they do is they create a virtual set. And all it is this massive crystal display in the background. And it has the capability of connecting to your camera with all of these different sensors. So as your camera moves around objects within these so-called virtual set, as you see on the screen there, they're filming the Ghostbusters car, the camera perspective changes and all of the depth of field. It's so beautiful. It's expensive, but in the long run, this would save TV companies and movie sets a lot of money because they don't have to build a set, because you can just put it all into this virtual screen. And if you have like certain special effects like particles and things that you need to fly around in the image, you can put that into that virtual set and then just mount your camera where you need to mount it. And if you move around, all of the perspective is going to change. The lighting and the depth of field. At first I was like, why are we stopping here? But when he told me a little bit more about it and I looked at it a little closer, it really got my attention. And hands down, that was my favorite piece of tech there.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Just the size of that display. I will admit, the first time I watched the video, I was like, "What? This isn't a TV. This is a guy on a track." But then I looked in the background. I was like, "Oh,
right." That's exactly what happened with me. You know, and the attendee that was standing there, bless his heart, I know he was like, "Man, I need to shut this dude down because he's just poo-pooing all over our product." But he set me straight. He set me straight. He's like, look, yeah, this is not what you think it is. This is a lot more, and it's going to save a lot of money, because you have to consider these production companies. They have to build these sets, so much faster and in a lot more in advance, and things change very quickly, and you're spending all of the labor costs, you're spending all of the money on the actual pieces for the set, the location, and all of that. That can add up. So get this and have it virtually done, and you're just doing it with some AI and doing it with some creative eye at the keyboard instead. It's saving a lot of money in the long run.
I saw you and Leo stopped by another Better booth while you were there.
Yes, we did. And I did not give them a hard time.
Good. Good. I'm glad. For folks who are wondering what the heck Better is, it's that product that I mentioned in my top 3 for the year that we did earlier, last year. And Leo and Ant stopped by that booth to talk about, that technology. So that was exciting to see them at CES as well, helping out folks with sleep conditions.
Yep. You put that tracker right on your forehead with some medical grade adhesives, and it's going to give you applicable data to help you sleep better, and not necessarily just sleep tracking stuff.
Now, did you get to drive around in the Segway chair, the Dr. Eggman chair?
Mr. Laporte tried to, but they did not allow us to move it. The funny thing is, you sit down in that chair and they make you put a helmet on.
What in the world?
I mean, you're not going anywhere, but they make you put a helmet on. So he sat down and everything felt fine to him, and he's all pumped up about it because he owns Segway products already. Yep. And this is just the level up for him, and he's looking forward to trying to get his hands on one of those and have it, sort of running around the streets of Petaluma here soon.
Yeah, because why didn't they let you? Does it not work yet?
I don't know, but I know
why.
they had a waiver form right there, and they handed you a helmet, and you see Mr. Dickie D, They even tell you to fasten the helmet.
Oh, brother. You're not going anywhere, but they want
You're
you
not going anywhere, but you need to fasten that helmet and you need to put it on before you even think about sitting in this. So
See,
they're protecting themselves.
the thing about CES that I've always run into, the issue there is the communicable exchange of all sorts of organisms. And so
also known as germs.
Yeah, also known as germs, but also organisms like lice, which don't quite count as germs, but could certainly be in those helmets that they're all shuffling around. And it's also why, just pro tip, don't do any of the, well, you can, but take some like alcohol wipes with you. The virtual reality goggles, if they're not cleaning those off, that's very bad, because there is a brain-eating amoeba whose favorite entry point into the brain is through your eye. So yeah, just make sure you keep clean, keep protected. It's
totally
true.
with you on that. I'm totally with you on that. I don't test any of those things.
Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. What do you got?
NeoFect Smart Glove. What is this all about?
This one is very near and dear to my heart, as well as a lot of the folks in our Twit community. That's twit.community in your browser. They wanted to know a little bit more about technology for the folks with medical disabilities and give them something to help with accessibility. And NeoFect offers therapy for stroke victims, and it sort of gamifies their physical therapy by giving them these different gloves or different track pads and stability mats. And it hooks into a little app. So instead of just going through therapy methodically and just sort of, all right, can I get this over with? They have a video game that lets you sort of gamify it, and you can share it with other people. And the big thing about it is you don't necessarily have to have this at a medical facility where you're spending a lot of money for co-pays just to have an office visit. If you can afford it, you can put it in your home and handle your treatment and manage it with your medical practitioner or what have you, and sort of keep you on track with your therapy, as well as just sort of gamify it and not really bring it down and keep you motivated to get better.
Yeah, keep improving, keep moving forward. So, okay, all things considered, you got to be coming back soon, right? Is today your last day, and then that's it? I think today's the last day of CES.
This is the last day. I'm going to spend this day doing a little bit of research for some other things that I'd like to work on there at twit.tv. But I won't leave until the weekend. I'll leave here Saturday. So I'm going to do some research today and tomorrow and just check out some other stuff that's sort of lingering around here on the show floor. I wanted to mention one more thing that I think is important here. With the keynote that started out CES, there was a lot of controversy around the Trump lady being on stage and equality and womanizing and all of that nasty, messy stuff. And CES has a reputation with booth babes and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has changed over the years. But what I noticed this time, and what I think is a good move in society, if you will, is I notice a lot more women in prominent position at these booths. And I notice a lot more people that look like me, people of color, in these booths doing demonstrations and actually knowing the product and not just reading the script. Awesome. and actually having prominent positions. They are directors of this and chiefs of that. And it was really nice to see that just things are sort of, the tide is changing, if you will. And it was just heartwarming to see that people are getting these opportunities, because Silicon Valley has a seriously crappy reputation about equality, and it's nice to see that some people out there trying to do this and make it a little bit more equal for everybody.
Awesome. Absolutely.
That makes me happy too. Yep. I'm glowing.
Absolutely. And ties into the story that we'll be talking about here in a second as well.
It's like you knew, but you didn't. Yeah. But it's like you did.
But it's like you did.
Wow. See, man, I love y'all so much. I'm always connected to you one way right here.
I mean, that's just the way it goes. It's you're part of the Twit brain now. So
that's right.
We all share one large brain.
I hate it. Here. Thanks. I hate it.
Thank you, Ant. Thanks for taking some time. Have fun researching these last couple of days, and we miss you. We can't wait to see you when you return. For folks who want to watch all the stuff that you and Leo have been putting together, if you want to subscribe, go to twit.to/. CES. That's where all the CES videos, kind of like a playlist, can be found. If you want to subscribe to it, go to twit.tv/events. That's going to take you to our events feed where a lot of these things are going to be put into like longer form episodes. But if you go to twit.to/CES, that's where you can find all the CES videos that are being published right now.
That's right.
Yep. And you guys are doing great work. Thank you, Ant.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Y'all take care. Create and dominate, baby.
Stay well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. We'll see you soon. All right.
Well, yes, a great segue chair into the next topic.
Yep.
There is this great report in Wired from Lauren Goode. It's about the actual headline is "Sex Tech Companies Are Having More Fun Than the Rest of Us at CES." CES, or more accurately, the group, the company, the organization that runs CES has kind of been a bit prudish.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
In the past about sex tech. And in fact, DiCarlo, who is the individual who is named in this article, and this sort of the profile of this article, Enzo DiCarlo, was in a little bit of a story in 2019 when her team was awarded a CES Innovation Prize in the robotics and drone category for a sexual wellness product. Shortly after she and the team received the CES Innovation Prize, it was rescinded, and they said that they weren't going to be giving out she was disqualified by the Consumer Technology Association because the product was, and I quote, immoral, obscene, and profane.
Oh my God.
Mind you, this was a product that it was not an anatomically accurate version of an organ, of a sex organ. It was not in any normal definition of the word obscene. It was simply a sexual wellness product that for once was marketed to women and focused on women instead of where in the past this any sex tech that's been at CES has not been marketed in that way.
Yeah.
Interestingly, and this was a piece that I wanted to touch on separately, or rather a story that I wanted to touch on separately. Interestingly, this year, VR pornography has been banned at CES. And normally this is where I would argue for sort of a wide range of let's allow this tech and the stuff in this space to exist and be able to sort of freely be available to people. But I saw how that technology was misused in the past. That's that particular category. I was at CES and I was there with many of my former colleagues from Mobile Nations, the iMore team. And one of my colleagues, a woman, and I were going through the VR area, and one of the representatives brought us over and said, "Oh, sit down, let's have you check this out." And I sat down and, again, afraid of brain-eating amoebas, I said, "No, I'm not going to be demoing this technology." And mind you, this was a booth that the name of the company was all that was listed.
And there was no clue.
There was no clue about what it was going to be.
Oh, boy.
They put this device on my colleague's head and began to play it. And I kid you not, the representative the whole time was chuckling as this was going on. And I'm thinking, oh, we can't see what she's watching.
Right.
I thought she was going to be, watching some silly game or something like that. So did she. And as the video proceeded, she shouted and took the helmet off, and then they were laughing more. And she told me what it was, and they had her watching VR pornography without telling her what it was, without any sort of warning, without asking for consent to be put into this space, and they thought it was funny. So I kind of have a bias against how that has been used in the past, and,
no kidding.
and kind of happy that it is banned, because the thing that I have to say about virtual reality that differs from these other products is, one, people are not actually using these other products that are available at CES. These sample products they're not using in the way they're meant to be used. So that is the first thing, that it exists in a separate space. You're not actively using it there while you're checking it out. With the VR pornography, you are. And then also there have been studies that show that virtual reality to the brain can be just as real as actual reality. Our brains are capable, or rather are in many ways incapable of sorting fact from fiction when it comes to the reality that we experience, which is a little bit frightening, but that's just the way it is. So essentially, she was put into a situation that she should not have been put into without her consent. And
absolutely not. That's frightening.
Yeah,
and
it was horrifying.
Yeah, and to know that the people who were running the booth were actively, like the way you tell it, it sounds like a joke.
Yeah,
you know
and
what I
they
mean?
thought it was.
It sounds like a prank of some sort, but that's kind of like a prank. Like there would be many people that would be placed in that position. In this case, against their will, like without any sort of choice or inkling of what was about to happen. And just by nature of being put in that position, you know, let's say they have a significant other, would feel like they had just cheated on their significant other. I mean, there's a whole emotional
sexual trauma in their life.
Absolutely.
So
that's really crazy.
It was horrible. So in that way, I'm kind of happy to see, I think that they, you know, I don't call that prudishness. I consider that to just be a good move based on actually thinking about the people that are involved in this. And so that was a good move. But when it comes to the rest of this stuff, you know, one of the rules that they've put forth is that these technologies cannot be anatomically accurate.
Right. Representations of
they have
anatomy.
to be basically not fleshy or veiny.
Right.
None of that kind of thing.
Right.
And in most cases, this technology isn't that way anyway. But it's been the case that, you know, these VR pornography demos have been a part of CES for a long time, including as early as 2017. Meanwhile, the technology that was marketed toward women was always about babies. It was, you know, it's been baby bassinets or smart diapers or breast pumps or things like that. And so a lot of this technology that is being exhibited this year is for everyone. And some of it is gendered, some of it is genderless, but it is interesting to see how this is working. It is on a 1-year trial basis. The CTA is seeing how this goes.
Meanwhile, the CTA is saying that's how we introduce new categories, and apparently that's not actually the case. But in this case, that's what they're saying. It's like, all right, that's convenient. But,
yeah.
Okay.
And there aren't that many, even, you know, now that this, and I'm not surprised, there aren't a whole lot. There are about 12 sex tech companies that are exhibiting at CES this year. Yeah. But I like what DeCarlo says about this, and I think that this is the important point in all of it. Sexual health is health and wellness. The category that these products are being put into is health and wellness, and sexual health is a part of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm really happy that Laura DeCarlo has actually, so she won, it looks like, has won a couple CES Innovation Awards. This time they won't be rescinded, which is fantastic. And then there was a story in here about how another person who makes sexual wellness, or at least is, you know, a representative for the company that makes sexual wellness devices, saw DeCarlo, came up, gave her a big hug, and like, can I take a photo with you? You're the reason why we're here. Yeah. Because DeCarlo really did fight against the policies that were in place to try to get a change to happen. And the last thing that I'll say about this is I want to quote DeCarlo again. We have demonized female sexuality for millennia. They're taking baby steps. It's understandable because the last thing you want is to open the floodgates to entities that aren't respectful to human sexuality. But sexual health is health and wellness.
Yeah.
An excellent report from Lauren Goode.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Over at Wired. You should totally read it and check out some of the really fascinating and really helpful sexual wellness products that are coming out. Again, it's not just for women or just for men. There are categories that can belong to anybody, but there is specifically a product to help with premature ejaculation, which is, you know, something that you wouldn't necessarily put into the health and wellness category at CES that you would see there. That's usually like, oh, golly, I've got to go to my doctor and have this quiet conversation.
There's such a taboo around all this stuff. And I think that's what's really important here. I think there's the perception, there can be the perception that anything sex is taboo.
Yes.
And maybe this is something that's very much, you know, this person versus that person, you know, everybody falls in different categories. But sex in and of itself is not a taboo thing. It is a human function,
Yeah.
right? It is when you start to get into some other aspects of it, then it becomes very murky. When you get into the pornography side of things, there's a whole lot of questions around that. So I personally I'm so happy to read the article and to kind of see that CES and the organization behind it is at least open to understanding that and testing this out this year and hopefully going forward, because sex in and of itself is not a taboo topic. There are ways to do this responsibly, and it is technology.
Yes.
And it's kind of amazing what you can do with technology now in all facets, including sex health.
Absolutely.
So why shouldn't that be there?
And that, I think, I know I said that was the last thing, but if people are kind of wondering why does it matter if this technology is on display at CES, well, not only are journalists there to cover this stuff and give these companies essentially access to more people who might be into it, but also a lot of time, well, not a lot of times, always, there are people there who are buyers for different companies that distribute products. Mm-hmm. So not being at CES, which is one of the big trade shows of the year, means not having access to the potential to get in front of the audience that they're marketing to, not get into stores that have people that they're marketing to, not have access. So by blocking these categories in the past, these companies are not finding more traditional ways to succeed. They have to go elsewhere and may not get not get in front of as many eyes. And so it is essentially by blocking them, they're blocking the chance for these companies to thrive and put out products that actually could be helpful to people.
Yep, absolutely. Completely agree. I'm happy you brought that story. My story is about something very different, but Bluetooth, which actually is getting a much-needed update. There was an official announcement made at CES this week. A number of updates actually coming to the Bluetooth spec. And I don't know when we're going to start seeing these changes, but devices are going to have to kind of support some of this stuff. But really cool stuff. Bluetooth LE audio. LE audio is kind of a while ago, Bluetooth LE low energy kind of came out, and that was more about like a low bandwidth, low power sort of Bluetooth, but limited in functionality when compared to normal Bluetooth. LE audio is an evolution of that low energy Bluetooth radio, away from kind of simply being a low bandwidth option that's being used in IoT devices, but also now improving audio transmission. So in the ways of distance, in the ways of improving battery performance, and they're also including a new audio codec into the LE audio spec called LC3. That means that manufacturers who start supporting this LE, this low energy spec, will be able to bring high quality audio along with it too. So whereas Bluetooth, you got the best quality audio through just your normal Bluetooth spec before, and that had its own, disadvantages, let's say in battery performance or whatever. Now you get the benefits of LE from battery performance and all these other things, as well as a high quality audio codec. So it's going to kind of change the way the flexibility that manufacturers have in how they build their products to support Bluetooth. Nice. And I think the quality is going to improve. You're going to get a lot of other things. Multi-stream audio. This is actually really cool. You have AirPods, right? Mm-hmm. And I have, true wireless earbuds. The way that they work, and I don't know about AirPods specifically, but I know about my Jabra Elite 65Ts and many of the true wireless earphones, is that you get a single Bluetooth signal from your phone to a single earbud, and then that earbud transmits the other signal to the other earbud, right? And occasionally, and some earbuds are better at this than others, but occasionally they will fall out of phase with each other. So you'll get this like weird little delay effect between the two, and it's just so annoying. I don't encounter that with the Jabra 65Ts. I love them.
I've not had that with the AirPods either, and in fact, I'm not sure exactly what
Apple might do things. Apple might do things a little differently.
Yeah.
But I've definitely experienced them in other earbuds, and when that happens, it's just super jarring. Well, now this is going to support multi-stream audio, which is basically Bluetooth from the phone, for example, sending multiple streams to these different devices. So once manufacturers start building these earbuds that support this, each earbud would get its own stream from Bluetooth, managed through Bluetooth, and things would stay in sync. That also would allow for you to, when you get a call, you happen to be listening to something, and then you get a call, it automatically stops what you're listening to say call from blah, 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 right? With multiple streams, it will be able to play both. So your music won't necessarily have to stop in order for that call audio to shine through. So make some more flexible approaches there. And then what else? Support for hearing aids.
That's neat.
So it's going to basically taking all the benefits that I've already talked about and applying that to hearing aids that support Bluetooth.
So essentially,
going to open up a lot of things there too.
I could, if I wore hearing aids for low or no hearing, I could be at the movie theater. Well, the theater is probably not a good example. I could be at a sports game and watching and hearing the sports game and hearing the person next to me talking about why the play they just made was a good play. And then while that's going on, to provide my normal hearing or hearing at a level that I need, the other hearing aid could be used to take a call or to listen. So I can basically use them as Bluetooth earbuds and my hearing aids at the same time. That's really cool. Yeah,
super cool. You can see how that would really change things for people who are locked into using hearing aids and everything. That's a major improvement. So I think this is a pretty major update to Bluetooth. A lot of people, consider Bluetooth over wired to be inferior. I have a long history of sitting in that camp.
Yeah.
It's only in the last couple of years that I've really come around to the fact that I'm willing to trade off a little bit of that sound quality for the convenience factor, because now I have a pair of true wireless earphones that work basically 100% of the time the way I want them to. So I'm willing to make that trade-off, and I think things are just going to get better codecs so that the sound is improved and all that. So
cool.
I like where it's headed.
Me too. I like where your head's at.
Yeah.
Bluetooth LE.
What was that?
I like where your head's at.
What was the last part?
Bluetooth LE.
Oh, I thought... Never mind. I don't know what I heard. I thought that came from like a movie and there was a character that I totally missed. And I'm like, oh man.
Oh, gotcha.
What did I miss? I missed nothing.
Apparently,
this earbud that's in my ear blocks my hearing. So we'll
ding,
go ahead
ding,
and
ding,
blame
ding.
that.
Full circle. Nice.
Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That's where you can go to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats.
You can be a part of the show by emailing us at tnw@twit.tv and follow us on social media at Twit on Twitter or at twit.tv on Instagram. Also at Twit Talk on TikTok. I almost forgot the name of that platform. And if you want to tweet at me with all those T's, I'm at Mikah Sargent on pretty much all the social things.
Every week when we do this, once I start hearing them, I can't not hear them anymore.
And I remember that that's happening, and then I start hearing all the T's. And
but you're the one saying them.
I know.
Turn the T's into D's and see what happens.
What I should do is turn down my in-ear monitors whenever I'm saying it, and then I don't have to hear myself say the T's. I'm not distracted by it.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to everyone here in the studio who helps us out each and every week. Jeff, John, Jerry was in here earlier. Everyone here helps. Burke was in here, sitting over in the Dr. Evil chair. He's not there anymore, but anyways, he got bored of us. Mm-hmm. We will see y'all next week on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
I don't know why it was 3, but it was 3.
Just got to switch it up.